They're the bully boys of the revolution, the Basiji militia. Since Iran's disputed election last June, they've been out beating protesters and behind closed doors allegedly raping as well. Now Channel 4 News has learnt that not only protesters, but even Basij who refuse to participate in abuses may be subject to similar treatment.
The first time they took me for interrogation, they hit me so hard in my left eye that I couldn't see for a while. After the second day I could see a little, but I thought I'd gone blind in my left eye. I still have problems with it. It's never returned to normal.
Ali, as we're calling him to protect his identity, was a militiaman. I learnt of his existence last year when we broadcast a story about Basij leaders who allegedly ordered the sexual assault of young people who had taken part in protests. Ali was part of a group of Basij who say they refused to take part. He's fled to the UK.
The people were terrified. Some were already injured and their wounds had not been seen to. This was all very distressing for me because until then I had had very different responsibilities, not the beating up and crimes that they were perpetrating against the people.
Ali's distress was palpable as he described how he was then arrested and men with their faces covered came to his cell.
They created execution scenarios. They said, "We're going to kill you and we'll link your death to the protests. We'll say that you were killed during a protest." There was a table on which I was stood for some hours with my hands tied and a rope round my neck. They came a few times and said they'd come to execute me now or in an hour. Then they came and pulled the table away. I fell.
Ali could scarcely speak for tears.
I thought I was saying goodbye to this world. I felt I was fading. But when they pulled the table away, the rope wasn't attached to anything. I fell backwards and fainted. When I came to, I was wet. They'd thrown water over me. I vomited. They brought my confession and I signed.
Before the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva, the Iranian representative said torture was illegal in Iran.
That torture is forbidden by law, by constitution of Iran.
Their human rights record, he said, was good. But Ali was at his most distressed when he told me that his cellmate, not a protester but another Basiji from his group, started to shout and was punished with sexual assault.
The guards warned him that if he continued this behaviour, they'd make things worse for him. One of the guards came in and beat him. His face was bleeding and his clothes were torn off. The guard had a baton. He was sexually violated with it. One guard was outside, one inside the cell. I wanted to protest, to shout, to help him, but I'd seen how they dealt with protesters and I couldn't. I'm thoroughly ashamed. I'm shamed before God, ashamed of my youth, ashamed in front of my friend, ashamed in front of the people.
Last week, the Iranian government gathered people to celebrate the 31st anniversary of the Islamic Revolution. Once a true believer in the system, Ali by then was in Europe. He had been smuggled out by boat and travelled across the world by air and road using a fake passport. He's now applying for asylum.
I have this terrible feeling of pain that I spent the best years of my life unaware, and they used this. I was a tool for them to reach their objectives. I unwittingly got involved in their plans. I was unknowingly led by them. Their slogan was that we were the force of the people, the eminent ones, that we must lead. We were unaware of what they brought on us. Our thoughts were not our own.
Spreading lies.
Iran's supreme leader addressed the faithful. He said the post-election protests were the work of Iran's foreign enemies. But from the testimony we've heard, some of those who were once amongst the most fervent believers have turned against the state, which they say has turned against its own people.